Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the podcast. On this episode, I share an amazing conversation with Marie McLeod. Now, how we met was really interesting. I explain more in the episode, but for this to come about, it was my mum attended the screening of the film that she's in. And then my mum was like, you need to get in contact with her. And this was very spontaneous on both sides, but within 8 hours, we were able to, make this happen from the first email to then, the next morning I've got a flight out of Mildura, and it was just crazy. But it was a epic conversation nonetheless, and I'm so grateful that we both were able to make something happen. So Marie is a positive psychotherapist and the main presenter in the documentary How to Thrive, where she takes 7 participants with mental health challenges through a transformative wellbeing journey. I'm very grateful that I got a chance to watch the film before releasing this episode now, and honestly, I enjoyed it so much. It's so crazy how similar her techniques and tools are also to my program that I teach. So that gives me an indication that we're all doing good things, and the science is backing on that. So Marie has a no-nonsense yet compassionate coaching style that gets to the heart of the problem. She combines science of well-being, or the science of well-being, with practical application, which is really cool to hear in how she shares things. So in this episode, we dive deep into how to thrive in your life, the difference between happiness and thriving, also the difference between empathy and compassion, some tools for your mental fitness, how to find belonging, why it's important to share authentically, how to share your truth, but also hold space, finding your Thrive Tribe, and so much more. As I said before, this was really spontaneous, but just really enjoyable, and such a different approach to any of the other podcasts that I've been on. And I was able to ask a lot of questions from a standpoint of being the person wanting information and the person on the other side of that information. So I really enjoyed this, and I hope you do too. Also, on that note, you can go to the show notes wherever you're listening or watching, and there will be links to see the film trailer, or go to the website and connect with Marie. So go check that out while you're listening. Before we kick off this episode, just want to give a little shout out to the podcast sponsors. And I'm just so grateful for the support that I get on this podcast, and to even have sponsors is a really cool thing. Doing what I love and having people support that. Companies, brands, products that align with me and my mission. First off, we have Sacred Cacao, Sacred Taste, my favorite brand. I do a lot of work with this brand, this company, and part of the team. So, of course, naturally, I'm going to love them. But they were sponsoring me way before I started working with them. So they have a beautiful cacao drink all the way from the Amazon. There's 5 different flavors. My favorite would have to be the earth flavor, which is just like a beautiful hot chocolate that you can enjoy. I put my almond milk in my little frother, put a scoop of cacao, and it blends it up, and it's just, it's amazing. But here's the thing. There's no processed sugar. There's no silly additives that make it terrible like most hot chocolate or cacao drinks. This is filled with all good stuff. When you look at cacao, it's like the better cousin of coffee. So it doesn't give you a crash. It keeps raising your energy levels, but also opens your heart, which is a beautiful way to start your morning. So go check it out. There's a 10% off your order code. The code is Carlo10. Links will be in the show notes below. Secondly, we have BondCharge, a company that is striving to help optimize you as a human being throughout all the different distractions and harmful things that we can consume on a daily basis, like EMF and radiation, all those types of things. So BondCharge was so kind to give me a pair of those awesome blue blocking glasses, the orange lens ones, and I've wanted them for a long time because I use my devices late into the night. A lot of my creativity and inspiration comes at night. So for me, I have all the things on my phone and on my laptop, but being able to have glasses that I can put on is just a great way to not impact or have these devices impact the sleep that I'm about to have. And I've found a lot of benefits from wearing them, and even just the eye strain, not having to feel so tired looking at screens because I can just put these glasses on and use them. They also have a lot of other awesome products, red light therapy. They also have EMF blocking, beanies, caps, jumpers, headphones. So really cool products. Go check them out. The discount code is Carlo, all in capitals, and get yourself some awesome products to try. And thirdly, we have Shine, the natural energy nootropic drink to help you think, feel, and do better. I'm not someone that will reach for like a Red Bull or something like that, but back in the day, I would to get those energy boosts. Now I'm always looking for more natural ways, but also companies that are doing good things. And Shine approached me and it just made a lot of sense. I love that they've got ginkgo, L-theanine, turmeric, all these incredible nutrients and ingredients in this drink. So you're getting that kick of energy, but you're also not suffering for it in the long term. So when I'm needing that boost, I'm reaching for a Shine. My favorite flavor in the range would have to be the pink lemonade, the blue lemonade. And honestly, there's so many good flavors. So go check them out. I don't have a discount code for this one, but the team at Shine the products of Shine are literally everywhere. Service stations, supermarkets. Go grab a Shine and you'll taste the difference and you'll know what I'm talking about. Marie, thank you for joining me this morning. It's quite interesting how this all happened. We were just joking around like 12 hours ago. We didn't even know who each other were, never even been in contact in our life. Yesterday, I was hosting a wellness event up here at the studio. My mum was ringing and messaging, and it was like interfering with my Spotify and the music. And I'm like, Mum, stop! Like trying to put my phone on airplane mode. And she's like, you need to check out this lady. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like no context. Sounds good. She sent through the trailer of a movie or a documentary, and I'm like, I have to wait till later. Yeah. Checked it out when I was in the car, and I'm like, okay, interesting. What do I do with this? And she's like, oh, you should get her on the podcast. And I'm like, I don't know this lady, and to set this up, and she's like, oh, she might have flown home by now. And I'm like, you know what? My whole career has been, and especially with the podcast, has been just send a message, find a way. And the really, I can, not to sound like a stalker, I can find ways to find emails. So I was like, I'm going to try on Instagram. You don't really have much on Instagram. So I'm like, I don't think she's going to be on there. I was like, I'll try email, I'll try LinkedIn. Just send the message. And if something comes from it, awesome. If not, we tried and maybe we could set something up. I actually didn't even know where you lived. So I was like, well, it can be for the future. But you replied and we set this up, and it was like, I can meet you at 7:30 a.m. And I'm like, she's going to hate me saying this is morning. But then when you said your flight was at 10:30, I'm like, it's the only opportunity. If it happens, it happens. If not, no loss there. But we're here. Like, here we are. Thank you so much. So fun. Yeah, thanks for not thinking I'm a weird,
Well, I'm kind of glad you didn't know my address, because maybe you would have turned up there if you stalker tendencies. No, as I said, I'm kind of a believer of the serendipity of things, and sometimes things cross your path, and you just think, well, what the heck? Why don't we take a moment? And it's been fun already getting to know you and what you're doing, and I think we have that kind of shared mission of doing good in the world, and here we are in Mildura, and what better way to spend a morning before I jump on a plane back to Melbourne.
Well, I think like even for me, it's like I love doing this, so meeting new people, especially like, no offense to any of my friends from Mildura listening to this, but like I was kind of stuck on like, okay, who is doing some really impactful things in the world, but also in Mildura. And I'm like, there's very little to choose from there. So when this opportunity is here, I'm like, oh, awesome. And then you found out you're from Melbourne, and it's like, well, I'm going to be back in Melbourne in 6 months. So
Yeah.
this is really cool, and you do so many amazing things. So, but how did you end up in Mildura out of all places? Like, this is really random for
Yeah,
a lot
it
of
is.
things.
I did feel a little random when I was on the. I went to the airport yesterday, and they said you need to get on a bus to get to the plane. I thought, this is getting a little remote, and then I got onto the bus, and I opened my bag, and my sneaker rolled out, and I was like, oh God. And then everyone started laughing and chatting, and I was like, this is cool. Like, I can tell that, we're going somewhere where people are more friendly and laid back than Melbourne. But it came about because I've been doing some work with the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, DFFH, and I have been doing that with a group in Melbourne, and one of the people that they had invited was a counterpart from here in Mildura, or in the Mallee, as they call it. And halfway through doing the program, the Mallee said, you know what, we need this here. And so we are in the process of kicking off the How to Thrive program here with DFFH, and to do that we were launching with a screening of the How to Thrive film, and that was yesterday. And so I flew up to be part of that, and I think it was your mum that was in the audience, and that's how we came to be here, right? Yeah.
I love it. And like, I was watching the trailer, of the film, How to Thrive. Yeah. And I was like, this is interesting, and I tried to like find ways to watch it, and like I couldn't, and to at least try and do some sort of like, this actually looks like a really good film, I want to go watch it, and there's nothing anywhere because it's not actually released yet.
Well, we've done a limited theatrical release in October last year for Mental Health Month, and at the moment we're sort of doing private screenings, and it's available to corporates and community groups. And so that's the way in which it's getting out there. If anyone is interested in having a screening, then they can reach out on howtothrivefilm.com, and there are always ways that we can make that happen. And from October this year, the film will be able to be distributed more widely. At the moment, we're just sort of building it up, and also trying to share the How to Thrive program out into the world. But for now, you can look at the trailer and learn what we're about, and it's similar to what you're doing, right? Is we're all thinking about ways that we can help people to thrive or live their best lives. Yeah.
It's like, I've released a masterclass one time called How to Thrive. So I was like, when I see it, like tools to thrive, like thrive's such a good word for it. Like, we're all looking to thrive. But what does thrive mean to you? What is someone thriving in their life? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting making a distinction between the words happiness and thriving, because I think that happiness is probably the word that we bandy around quite a lot. I don't feel happy. I want to be happier, but I think it's really important to realise that happiness is just an emotion that can rise and fall momentarily. So I might feel happy when I have my morning coffee, or I see the sunrise, or I play with my puppy or my child, or I get a surprise gift. I feel happy for a moment, or even something bigger. I get a promotion or something amazing happens. So happiness might occur for a moment or for a month, but it doesn't last, right? It's something that we adapt to. Our brain's hedonic adaptation system means that when something really good happens, we feel good for a while, and then we return to our baseline level of well-being. The good thing about that is that it happens when bad stuff happens. So, we have the death of a loved one, or we have a divorce, or we are in an accident and we become disabled. The brain's capacity to then also adapt back to our baseline level of happiness. So that is a really good feature of our brain, but what it does mean is that the things we chase after that we think will make us happy don't, because, we get that holiday, or we get that, new boyfriend or girlfriend, or, whatever, but we adapt very quickly back down. So really thriving is a more consistent state of feeling good and functioning well, and it's the ability to more resiliently, I guess, ride the waves of life. And I guess what I'm about, and perhaps what you're about as well, is how do we equip ourselves for that?
Yeah, I love it. And it's like the fact that you've got this in a film as a platform, like a film, is going to be really accessible for a lot of people. And you've seen that the rise on Netflix with a lot of different series, whether it's, I was going to say Goop, but not really. That's more like products and services. The Tony Robbins documentary, I'm Not Your Guru. Like, there is more of this going out there, and more on these platforms where normally you just watch, a TV series that's, just for fun or drama or whatever. But, the fact that maybe this could be a series or could be a film that people could watch, but also gain that information, which you'd normally have to read a book or go to a seminar or do a program. It's making these things really accessible, which I think is really good, because we are consuming things. But the more that people have those little touch points, maybe it'll plant a seed of like, oh, this is how I can thrive. Oh, maybe, and there's a lot of examples in the film, isn't there? Yeah, so people can go, oh, that's, even Mum said, she's like, I could relate to a few of those people in the film. And I was like, well, that means it's a really well-made film. So how does it feel being a star of a film?
Oh, it's a bit strange when you walk into a cinema and you see your face.
Yeah, you're on the front. Yeah.
It is a bit unnerving. I guess many of us, myself included, don't really even like having our photo taken, let alone, hearing yourself and seeing yourself on that big screen. One of the first screenings we did was in one of those kind of IMAX-y type places, and your face is the size of a 10-story building or something. Wow. But I guess with many of these things, and you'll relate to this as well, Carlo, is that we do this stuff because it matters to us. Yeah. And every day I need to come back to what's my why. And so if I get unnerved or I get spooked or the imposter syndrome, right, is you just go, oh my God, why me? Why, like, who am I? Who do I think I am to be in a film that's called How to Thrive, where the tagline is the secret formula to happiness? Who do I think I am? Do I think that I have that all figured out? No, all of us are on a journey. We're all learning. But at the end of the day, I also say to myself, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? I have figured out a bunch of things, and I have brought together a whole lot of evidence-based practices that are not universally available to people, and it really works. And so I guess one of the things that we wanted to do with How to Thrive Film was to create an awareness and almost be a bit of a disruptor in the mental health service system, because at the moment, when people experience struggle, and that might be mental ill health or it might be just other normal human struggles, we experience grief, we experience parenting issues or financial difficulties or relational difficulties or whatever, and when we reach out for help, at the moment, the system is all about what's wrong with you. Right? It's you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you might be offered talk therapy if you're lucky, medication, and it's all about diagnosing the deficit disorder dysfunction and how can we fix you. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole science now around how do we help people recognise what is strong with you rather than what is wrong with you. And there are really practical evidence-based things that people can do, but they don't know. Right? In the same way that with our physical health, people mostly know that you need to eat well, sleep well, move well. And we've been learning that since we were kids. We know that for our physical health, but we don't tend to know the mental health equivalent of eating your broccoli and going to the gym. So I think, what we wanted to do was use the power of film and storytelling to offer a new narrative around that and move beyond just smashing the stigma of mental health and offering some really solid new ideas of what could be done.
Yeah. I think that's part of, a lot of the things that I do, but the thing that is interesting here and why I want to dig so deep on this is I don't come from a background of formal education. I have no qualifications, and I say that really openly. The stuff that I do is only from my experience. This is what's worked for me. I've been able to, I guess my brain puts things together to be like, okay, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4 of what I did, shared that with others. It's been able to help them.
Resonates, yeah.
Yeah, and take that step themselves and get results.
Yep.
Which I don't know. I see that's nice, but you actually come from a background of, you've got certificates behind you, you've got qualifications behind you, so you're a positive psychologist.
Yeah, my background is social work originally, and then I went back to the University of Melbourne and studied positive psychology. I've also studied adult education, but you know what, it never feels like enough, right? Like when it comes to a topic about how to thrive, how do you be your best or whatever, and when you're stepping out into the public arena, well, for me anyway, it never feels like enough. I always feel like I'm underqualified. Yeah. So
well, there's always so much to learn, isn't there? Yeah. And there's things are evolving. You're learning more. You're sharing. Like it's never ending. But yeah. So how did you take us back to you growing up? Your development. Like how did you land into this path and doing what you do now?
Well, I think that oftentimes this kind of work.
Keep talking.
Is a bit of a calling, it's a something that you feel called to do in terms of wanting to make a difference in the world. And for me, I can remember I grew up in rural New Zealand. My dad was a farmer, my mum was a teacher, but I did grow up in an environment where they were very community minded. My dad particularly would always be bringing people home who were lost, metaphorically, that he had figured out that, they were depressed or having marital issues, or they were just needed a bit of love. And so our house, despite that, I was the eldest of 5 and we had a 3-bedroom house, we would always be taking people in. And I loved that. From as long as I can remember, I felt so interested in what makes people tick and how to help people to be happy. That was the language I would have used back then. And, the sort of what can go wrong with people, what can go right with people. And I had an innate sort of ability, like perhaps you have as well, that people just open up. So, even when I was quite a young child with people coming and going, I would be the secret keeper. People would tell me stuff and I would intuitively have a way of saying things that they found helpful. So I think that, there was something that was in me, and I see it in my dad, I see it in my daughter. There's something a bit intuitive about that. And so as soon as I had the language for it, I knew that social work was what I thought was, going to be my profession. And so I didn't finish school either, actually. I left school what would have been the equivalent of year 11. And I went from my little farm in New Zealand to London, right? Wow. And when I was 17, I had never been in a city. I'd never taken a public bus. I'd never... I just had no idea. My mum was like absolutely horrified, but I decided that I wanted to go and see the world, and I went to nanny, and by the time I was 18, I'd been to London, Paris, New York, but I'd never been to Wellington in New Zealand, like it was a bit ridiculous. But I was sort of that combination of brave and stupid, and I just sort of made it up as I went along. But and now I'm at the experience where, as a parent, I'm going to have to let my kids go and do the same thing. But I knew that I wanted to study social work. So, from Spain, where I was working, I applied to do social work in New Zealand, and I did that degree. And straight from that, I started working in child protection, juvenile justice, disability, kept travelling, But, that was... a field I loved, but it was a field that was very much focused, as I said, on the issues, risks and problems with people. And it wasn't until much later, I guess I had some glimmers into it. I later in life managed a program called Neighbourhood Renewal here in Victoria, 21 disadvantaged communities, 8-year commitment from government, going in and saying these communities are disadvantaged. How can we fix it, right? Which was a similar version of, child protection. There is something wrong in this family. How can we sort of assess the risk and do something about it? It wasn't until I had kids, and I had 3 kids in 2 years, that the wheels fell off, and I guess what I didn't know then was that I had twins and another one. Probably did the maths on that, but I one of my twins has high functioning autism. All of my kids have ADHD. It was really crazy, and before I knew it, my husband and I were both sort of experiencing kind of mental health challenges. The kids were wild, absolutely wild, and then we ended up being in a service system where I was on the other side of the table, right? Yeah. And it just became acutely apparent to me that this focus on everything that was wrong with us wasn't the way that it should be. It just was horrible. Every time I would show up, at a pediatrician or a psychologist or whatever, so what's gone wrong this week? Tell us about what happened with your son or yourself or your family or your relationship. And you're recounting all these things that are stuffed up. And then someone handed me the book Flourish by Martin Seligman, which was about positive psychology. And that was the turning point, really, for me to go, there's another way to think about this. Mm-hmm. We can begin to focus on strengths and what's strong with us rather than wrong with us. That's a very long story about how I came to here. So yeah, I guess I started applying it in my life personally, and then in ever increasing circles outward professionally. Yeah,
and I think there's like an interesting middle ground between the focusing on the strengths and focusing on what's quote unquote wrong, or the things that aren't going well. Where is that middle ground? Because is it just focusing on the things that are going well, or just focusing on the things that aren't going well, or is there a middle point where it's like, okay, these are things that are going well, and also here's some things we should look at, and I'm guessing there's like a deeper side to it, not just like here's the things that are wrong.
Yeah, great question. I think that it's not all one or the other. However, our brains are wired to focus on what's wrong, okay? So we already have a disproportionate focus on that. It's called the negativity bias, right? And it comes from back when we were cavemen and women, when we needed to focus on danger for our survival, right? So we needed to be alert to a saber-toothed tiger that was lurking in the bushes, or a weather event about to happen. We are wired to pay exquisite attention and be attuned to the things that are risks for us. Now, that stood us in good stead back when we were cavemen and women, and we needed to be constantly alert for our actual physical survival. But now, in this day and age, and we don't really have the same threats to our survival in that kind of way, but yet our brains are still wired, scanning our environment, 80% of the time for, oh gosh, what's out to get me? And that wiring does not predispose us or support or is not conducive to a thriving life. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, where's the balance between focusing on what's wrong and what's strong, to use that language? Yes, it's important to be able to notice if something is a real threat or to address one's issues, but not to the degree to which many of us are doing. And we can then think about how do we rewire our brains so that it's not so overwhelmingly a focus on the negative. And that's one of the activities that we teach in my work. But I think the other part of that is that what we focus on grows. The more we focus on the things that are going wrong, the more we get of them. And so what I find is that it's so easy to get stuck in the darkness, right? And the more we feel in the darkness, the more the darkness grows and envelopes us in that. If we can begin to just shift our thinking to, what is working well, what am I grateful for, and a little bit of light comes in, and then another little bit, and suddenly the light around us begins to come in, such that the darkness fades and is not so overpowering. And I know that sounds woo-woo. Even as I'm hearing myself saying that, I'm like, oh my God, people are just going to be eye-rolling in that moment. But there's actual neuroscience about that, in terms of how our brains work, that our brains are wired more to operate best when they are experiencing more kind of positive emotions. Mm-hmm. We can talk more about that, but
yeah. And I think even for me, one of the biggest changes I felt, and I think we all have, I say mental fitness, right?
Yeah, nice.
Because there's just, in terms of my physical fitness, there's times where I'm not as fit and there's times where I'm really fit.
Yes.
And, when I'm really fit, I'm doing the things that support that.
Yes.
So when mental fitness, if I'm doing the things that support that, and that could be anything for anyone. For me, it's meditation. For me, it's practicing gratitude, and I teach a gratitude process. Yeah. It's journaling. It's when I'm actually taking time for myself and just doing more things that support that, then I feel more mentally fit.
Yes.
But when I'm not, it obviously goes the other way, and it's no surprise. And then when you mix in things like, whether it's more alcohol consumption or eating bad food, everything is connected. And I notice myself
sliding.
Go on that spiral. Not lucky. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to catch myself really quickly on that and go, okay, it's going too far this way. What changes can I make? And I've been really adamant on trying to focus on not on you're wrong, you're bad, you're doing this. It's okay, this is what's happened, and it could be for multiple reasons. I don't want to fixate on those. But what can I start introducing? And I think those little steps have helped me just be able to kind of shift or go on a different path that aligns with what I want to feel and who I want to be. And I think there's so many things. I think there's such a big world right now where, and this is where it's also probably pretty challenging for a lot of people. And we were talking about social media before at the cafe. Social media, that everyone's an expert.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone's saying, this is what you should do, or this is what you have to do.
Well, not just expert. Everyone's looking like their life is so shiny.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I've been I released a docuseries start of last year of a rock bottom that I hit in my life. Little did I know this year was going to be an even bigger one. But more docuseries to come out.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of feedback from that where people were like, wow, we didn't from Instagram. I try and share as openly as honestly. Of course, there's things you keep private that I understand social media is social, but also I have a life that I want to keep private. For the most part, I want to share my failures and stuff like that and how I'm feeling, because I know people can resonate, and I know that I want to have a voice that can inspire people and feel like people can relate to it. So when I released that, a lot of people were like, oh wow, I've been going through that. I didn't know that someone like you would feel that. And it's no, I have good days, I have bad days, and like you said right at the start, you were like, happiness is a feeling, and so is probably the opposite of that, sadness and everything else. I think what social media I've seen for a lot of people is people put the highlights, and then people focus on, oh, I'm not feeling that or doing that, therefore my life isn't good, or I'm not good because I'm not feeling that way.
That social comparison effect kicks in, right? And it's really damaging. And as we say, then those things can spiral. And, people's number one emotion after looking at social media is they feel regret, or they feel, like that I'm not like them, I'm not good enough, that sort of. And we are doing ourselves a disservice when we show just the shiny bits of our life. And that's pretty much become a societally accepted way for us. Is I say, Carla, how are you? You say fine. How are you? I say fine. I mean, shit, really? Is that all we've got? It's like, where do we get off not authentically sharing our whole selves? Not with everyone and everywhere, but if we know that as human beings we do ourselves a disservice when we are not authentically sharing with each other. If we know that as human beings we are wired for connection, and yet we only connect at surface level without truly sharing what is real for us, we can't authentically connect. And so I think that one of the, evidence-based practices for feeling good and functioning well is that we need to feel authentically connected with others. We need to prioritize those connections, and we can't get the same value from them if we're not prepared to be open and share the warts and all kind of stories about that. And I think we need more people like you who are saying this is how it is for me, and modelling that it's okay to be vulnerable and authentic and say my life is fantastic and amazing, and there are days when I struggle to get out of bed, or there are days when I feel crippled by anxiety or imposter syndrome or whatever it is, because that is the reality for most of us. There is no one who...
Well, most, I think just everyone.
It's just
really.
The whole notion of being perfectly imperfect is really empowering, I think, for me. And I think, like you, I really try to live my life with that degree of openness and authenticity. And I encourage people as well. In our How to Thrive program, the framework that I've developed for thriving is called Beacon. And the notion is, shining your brightest for yourself and others. But Beacon has these sort of evidence-based beams. The first is belonging, engagement, accountability, compassion, optimism, and nurture. So the number one thing is belonging, right? And we can't have belonging if we are wearing a mask all the time and not letting people in. We have to be prepared to find our Thrive tribe of people who help us to be who we want to be, and then we need to be prepared to open up and share, because belonging only happens when we are prepared to share our whole authentic selves with the world.
Yeah. And it's been something that I've been focusing on a lot, whether it's in the men's circles we hold here or like Tuesday night, for example, we did, it wasn't a men's circle, it was just breath work, and it happened to be 4 men. And, coming back to a town like this, and people can relate wherever they are in the world, because, all the different communities I've been in, you see the groups, you see the, the men that, will just play footy and don't want to, connect and do that sort of stuff. But coming back here, I was like, okay, it's a small town. I don't know many people like me, but every time I come back, there's someone I meet that I go, yeah, it's just, whether it's through Instagram or at a cafe, there's people here. Starting this space and seeing the people that, it's not my friends that I grew up with and played soccer with. It's new people that are on the same sort of wavelength that like the same sort of things. And, even that men's circle, there was 2 guys I knew, 2 I didn't know. We did some breath work, and breath work's very, can help you release emotions and all of that. And we went really deep with it, right? And I love facilitating those spaces. At the end, I just, as I always do, was just like, would anyone like to share anything that come up? Like, just expecting everyone to be like, oh, I feel really good. And it was just a chain reaction of tears and wow, like I finally allowed myself to feel, and I felt safe amongst this group.
Safety, that's it, right? You created a safe space where people could just be, and when you do that, it's like the floodgates can open, and we just don't have enough safe spaces in our society at the moment. And I think that we've become obsessed with being fine,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's,
but we're all pretending, right?
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not right. And our conversations are small talk and surface level, and that's not going to. And look, I think to be honest, COVID gave us a gift around that. COVID did give us the gift of an experience of shared struggle that did give us the opportunity to practice being open and saying, this is a really, shitty situation that we find ourselves in, and we're in it together, and we could practice saying
some sort of empathy.
We could practice saying that life wasn't great because everyone was comfortable with that. It was a environmental thing that was happening to all of us. But maybe are we going to learn from it? I don't know. Are we going to kind of hold some of that as we move forward to be able to say that we're not okay?
Yeah. Yeah, and like even with, that, like I remember saying, like even when there's been some really big challenges lately, when people would say, especially friends, they're like, "Oh, how you doing?" I'm like, my first answer is great. Do you want the second answer?
Yes,
Do you want the real answer?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Freaking terrible."
Yeah.
Like I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I've never felt so much emotion and heaviness, but also I think I come from this I'd love to know your opinion on this. Like I come from this awareness of, I know when I've got something to share and it's a lot, being cautious of if that person is able to actually hold that, listen to that.
Yes.
And because I work with a lot of people, I have a lot of people that I mentor and coach. For me, it's like I've noticed over the years, I can hold what someone says and I can hear, but not hold.
Yeah,
so
nice.
I hear it and I go, okay, like I can be compassionate. I can help them, whether not so much through it, but just hold the space for them.
Yeah, nice.
But not consume it and then be heavy for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas I know with the things that I'm going through, again, I'm very cautious of who I can share that to, because of I know that it can affect people.
Yeah.
But then I go, is that then a barrier for people to then share? Because we've got this side of, like you were saying before, right? And I want to figure this out too, because it'd be great for a lot of people to know this. Creating safety for people to share, but then also having people have the space and the energy to be able to listen and hold what someone's saying. What's your experience been like with that? Because I know, like, we can say, go open up, go share with your partner, you're this, but what if they're also struggling?
Yeah, so there's a few things in there, right? Is that I think that like a couple of different layers is I think you're thinking about the other person's experience of what you want to share with them. And there's the first thing is when you say, do you want the second answer? And they've got the opportunity to say yes or no. They might say, I do, but I can't do that right now. Or can we meet for a coffee or wine or whatever later, because they might not have the time or the headspace. So you are giving them that option. I think as well there is people's readiness or preparedness to go there, because some people are frightened by what you're about to say, and they're like, "Whoa, I actually don't want to know." The second bit, I makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know if I'll be able to, because I think people feel that they won't know what to say, and that is because they think they have to fix it. They don't have to fix it. Just allowing you to be heard is enough. Right? So I think that's the first thing, is choosing wisely about who you're going to share with, and whether they are those people who can just, as you say, they can hear it but not hold it. I love that. Hear it but not hold it. And I think that you're touching on the difference between kind of empathy and compassion, because the way I think about it is empathy is I feel your pain and I come round and I sit in that pain with you, and therefore it's painful for me too. We can't do that. We can't keep showing up in that kind of way without it negatively impacting us. But if you can see it, not be it, with compassion, like you're saying, I'm listening to your struggle and I am hearing but not holding. I'm showing up, I'm acknowledging your struggle, I'm sitting here with an intent to soothe it, but I don't have to become it, then that's compassion. And that is a really different neurological process. So when we are in empathy, where I'm sort of sitting in the pain and wallowing it with you, then we are using the brain pathways for pain. If we shift through to compassion, it's like I show up, I listen, and I have an intent to soothe it, not solve it, but just to soothe it in whatever, lightness that is, then I'm using the brain pathways for love. And that is endless for me. Yeah. So when you say, should I be concerned about who I open up to because am I giving them a load to carry? I would say, no, it's their responsibility in some respects to hold it lightly, not tightly, and remember that it feels good to be there for others and to give to others. So I talk about this concept of reverse kindness, right? Where if we know, and this is from the science, that kindness is one of the things that lifts us for the highest and the longest of anything that we can do. But if we don't let other people help us, we're denying them an opportunity for kindness and to feel good, right? So when you open up to someone, that is a gift to them because you are saying to them, I trust you, I feel safe with you, I am giving you the gift of being open and letting you in, and then they feel good by the chance to help or soothe in whatever way they can. So I think we need to I think we can what's the word I'm looking for is there's a different kind of way of viewing that, and rather that we are giving someone a load to carry, we are giving them an opportunity to that might be lifting for them. And that's a beautiful kind of rephrasing of it.
And I think there's that. I think for me, like asking the question is almost giving permission.
Yeah.
And even so, like a lot of the coaching and mentoring stuff that I do, especially when you start doing that, you want to try and solve everyone's problems.
Yeah.
And you're just like unsolicited sort of advice of like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. And it's like, I think everyone goes through that phase. Yeah. And then for me, it's been a switch of, and this is meeting, my friendship group now, which are very, very wise, very conscious and very aware, where it's like, we will offer and we'll say, may I offer a perspective?
Yeah, nice.
And if it's a yes, it's like, well, because we're such close friends, it's I'm here to call you out, but call you in with love. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say something mean just to make you feel bad. Yeah. It's going to be just honest. Mm-hmm. You may not like it, but I'm only saying it with love to support you.
Yes.
And I think in a lot of those moments, even for me, right, a recent challenging moment, when I have shared, I say at the start, because I've had a friend that's a really good friend, and we had this conversation because I was just going through it. Yeah. It was just all happening, and I didn't want to be coached on it. Yeah. I just want to express. Yes. Yeah. And she was asking the coaching questions and what do you want to get out of this? And I'm like, just listen. Just listen. Just fucking hug me. Yeah. Yeah, nice. That's all. Oh my God, I love that. That's all I want. I know all these things. You don't have to NLP me. I know the questions. Yeah. I don't want to get to that yet. Yeah. I just want to feel it. I'm feeling like the life is hard. I need a hug. I love just fucking hug me. Yeah. I love that. And, this is a strange turn of phrase, but in that moment, you just want to feel felt. Yeah. Right? All that anyone of us really needs is to feel kind of seen and safe and soothed if we're suffering, right? Yeah. For me, that is the definition of feeling like we belong. Right, is that we can be around people
where we feel that we are seen, safe, and that we will be soothed when we suffer. And that in that moment you felt safe enough to ask for what you needed and what you didn't need, right?
Yeah.
I don't need your wisdom in this moment. I don't need you to coach me. I don't need your NLP or whatever. I just want to feel felt. I just want you to hold me. And, again, if we go back to our kind of caveman bit, it's the oxytocin you needed, right? So the being in connection with each other, holding eye contact, having the opportunity to touch each other releases oxytocin in our body, which is that calm and connect kind of, sometimes it's called the cuddle hormone actually. So the preciseness of you saying, I just need a fucking hug is just gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah. And I think again, I've got that safety with those friends to be like, and I think because of the work that I've done, I can be so direct in those moments and just be like, I know who to go to. Yeah. And so that also leads on to, so was it the first step in what was it?
Beacon.
How to Thrive?
Yeah, the Beacon framework, belonging.
Belonging. How, because as you're saying, that belonging is having people around you that make you feel safe. Is that correct? Yep. How do we find that, especially if someone's listening or watching and they're in a situation where they don't feel like they can be safe, or maybe they're in a throwing a situation, they're in a family dynamic where they can't share because every time they share, it's either being shut down or being told, disregarded. Even in friendship circles, maybe they say, I want to share, and then those people never hold the space for them. Yeah. How do we find that belonging?
So I think that there is layers, like everything, right? And I think we know that having close connections is really important for us, and it depends what stage we're at. Some people, like you, have a Thrive tribe of people around you where you do have that, and you've cultivated that over time, and your job is to prioritize it, to invest in it, to keep it, to sustain it. And there are practices that you do with that. Yep. But if someone is listening and they're not there yet, then we are at the beginning points of finding our Thrive tribe. And that means finding people who are, going to give us that feeling of, seen and safe and soothing. So I guess if we know that cultivating connections is so important for thriving, but we don't yet have that Thrive tribe. And look, to be honest with you, this is one thing that really freaked me out when I started doing this work, because I was working at one point with people with clinically diagnosed mental illness who had been unwell for a long time. And if you say to them, the single most important thing to thriving is having close connections to others, they'll feel worse, not better, because oftentimes they're incredibly isolated. Yeah. So I had to figure that out, right? What's the starting point? And the good news is that Professor Barbara Fredrickson has done work around positivity resonance, right? That we don't have to we want to move towards having those enduring close connections with others, that Thrive tribe, but we can get a lift from just a micro moment of connecting with someone else. So when we buy our coffee, or when we go to the supermarket, or when we walk past someone in the street, or when we pat their dog, or we coo at their baby, or whatever it is, those little moments, if we can. And there are three little parts to this. The first is we need to use our eyes. We've got to look up, we've got to catch each other's eyes, and then we've got to do something that elicits a positive emotion. So I'm going to say something that, just in the moment makes a moment pass between us. So something that, makes us feel grateful or proud, or that we have a laugh about, or whatever. So these don't have to be grand things. It might just be that we're saying, oh my God, can you believe this weather? Or thank you so much, for my coffee. Like, this is the, best way to start my day. Or I love that color on you, or whatever. So these don't have to be really profound things, but they're just a little exchange between us that when we have eye contact and we have that little moment that for a little nanosecond, we come into a sort of mind meld together, and that releases all of these kind of hormones in our brain where we get a release of oxytocin, and that micro moment of connection is really good for us, and it is one of the sort of tiny engines that drive our well-being. So if you are not yet closely connected with others in an enduring, ongoing way, that is the starting point, right? And I say that like it's easy. It's not easy for everybody to look up and catch the eyes and say something to someone else. So I really want to acknowledge that in a heartfelt way. If you have been, depressed for a long time, if you are isolated, then just looking up can be really hard, right? So this is about just forcing yourself, little bit by little bit. And this is a funny thing to say, but I often say start with old people, start with people with dogs or with babies, somewhere where there is an easy way to kind of have a common connection. And then just catch their eyes and just, say a tiny thing if you can, and then notice what happens inside you. Just the tiniest little flutter, little lift, and then keep doing it. So that's the starting place of building connections. And then in terms of belonging, one of the things that's important to think about is that we are more likely to think or to feel belonging if we find people who share our values. So really, we need to belong to ourselves first, right? We need to know who we are, what we value, where we're going, who we want to be, and then we want to find people who help us to be that person. Because it's easier to feel like we belong if we have found people who are sharing our values, and that means that we've got to test that out a little bit, right? We don't spend enough time thinking about this for something so profound in terms of its capacity to make us thrive. We don't spend time thinking about who do I want my friends to be, and so I talk about gathering a Thrive tribe, and sometimes we have to trim the tribe. Because sometimes we've got people around us who lower us more than lift us. Those people who are just a drain. And then we have to feel permission to create boundaries and realise that we might need to cut those people loose.
Yeah.
That's harsh but fair, right? It's
I think that's just the evolvement of everyone. Like that person or you, like your values then change and evolve, and maybe they, we see it as like, or we teach it as like the levels of consciousness. And if you start not levels, but like if you shift to a different pace or evolvement, and that person's somewhere else and values something else, then it's naturally like it's gonna feel indifferent. And if someone's not willing to hold space for you, or be there
They're not
for
your
you.
people.
That's exactly. In the last podcast with Dan Kosh, the owner of Sacred and all that, we talk about this, and we talk about like, you'll do anything for the people you love. Like that's especially in friendship, and like we have a circle of people, and there's 4 or 5 of us. They'll drop everything and drive from Melbourne to Mildura if I need them.
Yes, yeah.
I'll do the same. I drove to Sydney to help them with a festival. Like I had things to do, but it wasn't like, oh, that's inconvenient for me. It's like, no, you need me, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it took time. It took a lot of time. It took losing people. It took, one even, especially then a business partner that then wanted to sue me, and now we don't talk. Just so many situations to know who's actually there.
Yeah.
And you're going to have, I think, different friend groups that are going to be for different reasons.
Yes.
Whether it's sport or social or this or that. And then, but that tribe's so important. And I love that you're creating an emphasis around that and having, steps in order to get into feeling better, but also creating a better life for yourself. And I think that's what we're all trying to create and share.
We're all trying to figure out, aren't we? And none of us is ever there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the important message to be kind of, leaving with today, is that everything's a journey. Whether it's, you finding your way to that beautiful Thrive tribe that you now have and saying it didn't happen overnight. It happened through being intentional. It happened through investing in those people, prioritizing it, dropping everything. Or whether it's thinking about maintaining our mental health in the same way as we maintain our physical health, that thriving, as I like to say, is not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
Right? You have to really keep holding yourself accountable for those healthy habits that help you to thrive. And that is a daily process. And we're doing ourselves a disservice if we pretend that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. It's not fair for you and I to sit here and have a conversation about people that teach thriving and pretend that it's easy, because it's not. Is it?
Yeah.
This is hard stuff. Life is hard. But we are committed to, both for ourselves personally and for those that we teach and coach and run programs for, equipping people with the tools, but also helping to figure out how they hold themselves accountable by finding the motivation to keep doing those things, because it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and we could share many more hours, but you have a plane to catch on all these topics. Where can people find you, find your resources, and what do you have to share that people can, if they're listening and they're like, I want to know more, I want to start this journey, where can they get in contact?
So mariemcleod.com is one place, or howtothrivefilm.com. You'll find me in both of those spots. We have the How to Thrive Academy that people can join. I do personal coaching. The How to Thrive film obviously is going to become more available soon. We've been a bit exclusive with it, but keep your eye out for that. But yeah, howtothrivefilm.com. We also have a Facebook group and social media, which I haven't been super good at, but I'll get better. But yeah, it's been really fun chatting today, and I welcome anyone to join our listening or other resources that we have as well.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you do offer, and so many places that people can plug in. I think even just this whole episode, if you've enjoyed this, whether you're watching or listening, please go to the Instagram, the Carlos Cirillo Show. I'll have Marie, all the posts will be about Marie, so she'll be tagged in all those things, but in these little snippets of wisdom, share them on your story, tag us, reach out. I don't know if Marie checks her Instagram DMs, but she checks her emails.
I will check my Instagram DMs.
I check mine. So
I do.
I think the big thing is, all these little bits that I do share, or even this whole podcast, share this, whether it's on your story or share this with someone that could benefit from it. And I think that then plants a seed, and then that could lead to something, then something, then something. And I think all of us need a little bit more inspiration and thriving in our life, and remembering that it is a journey. It's not just, now I thrive. It's no, it's a continuous, I think you said, continuous effort. Not being a spectator, you have to be responsible and keep showing up to thrive. And hopefully in sharing our stories, we've been able to inspire you and create some connectedness so that you can go, okay, I want to start this journey and I'm not alone. And I'm sure there's way more to dive deep into. So go check it out. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for responding to your random email. And even this morning, I'm out the front in a white van.
Yes,
and I'm like,
oh my God.
that sounds so.
Oh my God, my kids are always warning me. Oh yeah, the white van.
I'll have to paint it blue or something.
Yeah.
Or put
the Carlo wagon.
Yeah, put something on the side that doesn't make it so suspicious. But anyway, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Can't
so
wait
fun.
till our next conversation.
That's right,
and next time on the podcast. But thanks for tuning in. Much love, everyone. Peace.